You're listening to Coffee and Culture. We're on Talk 1260 and 103.7 KTRC, streaming at santafe.com. My name is Matthew Chase Daniel, and I'm your host every couple of weeks. And today I have two guests together, Stacy Levy and Patricia Lee Watts. And Stacy is an artist based in Pennsylvania, I believe, and Patricia lives here in Santa Fe. And Patricia runs eoartspace, which we'll talk about in a bit. And Stacy is coming to Santa Fe to do an installation in the Railyard as part of the Railyard Art Project at the end of April. So we're very excited to have her here, and she's done all sorts of interesting, great work that goes in different directions, and it's ecological, but a lot of it is sort of making visible the invisible, or making people aware of things that are all around them that they may not otherwise notice. And I think that's sort of the brilliance of your work that I've seen. And the piece that's coming to the Railyard is called Missing Waters, and it's part of other Missing Waters projects you've done in New York and now here, and maybe there'll be others in the future that are sort of using chalk paint, tracing the meanders of waters that are either underground or used to be surface waters that have been paved over and diverted. Is that more or less?
Yeah, I think you got it. Thanks for that nice description of my work. Yeah, and this particular one is a super ephemeral work. It only lasts until the rain comes, if there is rain, or we just wear it away by walking over it. So sometimes I work in very long terms, and sometimes I work super speedy. This is probably one of the fastest pieces, but it also has the most active making of it, which is lots of people converge on a site and work on making it in a day. And it does show, it's showing really probably more of the hydrological patterns that water has when it moves. And it's really interesting to see those flow patterns. They're really beautiful, and it's kind of a new way of thinking about water.
Yeah, I love, and we have it here in New Mexico, but less so than in places like where Patricia is right now in New Orleans, the Mississippi River, these incredible meanders where these huge rivers come full of silt that's eroding at their headwaters and all the way along. And then where the river gets wider and flatter, it slows down and the silt gets deposited in the riverbed and eventually builds up enough that it makes a dam, and the river decides to move to the right or the left and channel a new course because it's easier than going where it used to go. And so that's why you have oxbows and all these crazy meanders in rivers. And I think for a long time, our sort of human instinct has been to keep them where we want them and straighten them and channelize them. And sometimes that's very helpful and efficient, and sometimes it's disastrous and impossible.
Yeah, usually it's not good for the health of the river. A river seeks that kind of meandering curvature, and it's very dependent on gradient and the subsoils, but mostly rivers will keep repeating that meandering pattern in a fairly matched mathematical way if given their own way to draw on the landscape. It's just that we like to draw a straight line for them, because a meander, an ever-changing meander, is a bit of a problem if you're trying to put your city on the side of a river.
Yeah, exactly. We want to be by the river and we want to be by the ocean. And the ocean, being by the ocean also has its issues, whether it's tsunamis or sea level rise, or so it's this constant sort of push and pull. There was a great essay in a book by John McPhee called The Control of Nature, and the essay was about the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers trying to control the Atchafalaya River down there near New Orleans, and the Mississippi was wanting to overtake the Atchafalaya River and go down that course, and the Army Corps didn't want it there. They wanted it to go to New Orleans for obvious reasons, because there's a big city, big port city there, and the sort of futility of trying to do that. That was an
It's
old
true.
book, so I don't know what
It's a
happened.
wonderful book, and I'm not quite sure what the outcome is, but I know it's not good because the minute you try and make water do something that you want it to do, you're working against an extraordinary force. And I think one of the things that we have to understand about water, and also I have to mention that I say water a little funny because I'm from Philly originally, we spell it Wudder here, and
Letter.
that's perfectly fine. But one of the things that happens with water is we look at it as an asset that we want to live near, and water does not look back at us as an asset. It water wants to change constantly. We like stability as humans. When we build a road, we want it to stay dry, not get wet some of the time. And when we build the edge of a city or put our factories on the edge of the river to use the water power, we want it to stay dry and to stay in the same place. We don't want the water moving around and coming across the office floor. It's just not supposed to do that in our built sensibility of the world. But water has a totally different take on the planet. It just does what it wants to do, and we do what we want to do, which is keep things straight and narrow. And that's why we have so much trouble dealing with water, because we have very different agendas.
Yeah.
And water always wins, which is good, but it can be a hardship while it's winning, and we're having trouble living better with it. And I think that's like part of what this piece is about, is the idea that this water was once here, it could be again, but it's doing things that we don't really want to do. We want to have things stay the same, and water wants change. It's ever stochastic. It's always changing. And
Yeah.
so that kind of head to head that we get with water is so interesting because we also love it so much, but we have a real battle with it at the same time.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, there's things that water does on its own that we don't really try and control that we adore, which is it flows down these rivers, it goes into the ocean, it evaporates, it becomes clouds, they blow against the mountains and drop rain and fill the aquifer and make the rivers run. And that's something that's beyond our control. And thankfully so, perhaps, because who knows what we would choose to do instead. Um, and there's this sort of limited amount of water on the planet, and it covers a huge amount of the planet, but it in a pretty thin layer. If you look at the mass of the planet, very little of it is
That's
actual
true. It's
water.
only on that top surface.
Yeah.
Not Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's kind of amazing that way. And like beavers are another creature like us that tries to control water in their way, um, building dams, flooding areas, um, creating wetlands. And for a long time, people wanted all the beavers gone because they wanted them to make hats, but also because
Right.
they're
Good fur.
destructive. And we had that recently here in Santa Fe, in La Cienega, where um, beavers found actually the Santa Fe River is dammed above Santa Fe, and there's reservoirs there, and a lot of the water goes. Some of it runs down the riverbed, but a lot of it goes into our municipal water system and then ends up in a sewage treatment plant on the end of town, the downhill side of town, and then flows out back into the original riverbed as treated sewage water, which is pretty clean. It's a good sewage,
Hmm.
it's a good treatment. But then the beavers found their way there and dammed up parts of that river and started flooding roads and bridges and people's houses.
Right.
And um,
Beavers are really interesting kind of, they're a living creature in a way that, I mean, water is alive, but not in a bodily way. But there are the beavers who are living, who have a different way of living with water. They're utilizing its flow. They are engineering it to stop flowing in certain places. But it's particularly great for the landscape that they alter because they create these wetlands and wet areas that are great buffers against fire and wonderful habitat resources, place to come and drink, and then a place to come and lay your eggs. But then the next living body is the humans, and we have trouble with the beavers because they have a different way of dealing with water than we do. And they also have a different way of dealing with the landscape. In other words, they want the trees down and the water to stop flowing. And we want a nice forested edge and fastly moving water. So it's funny to see another group, the beaver group, um, against what we want, and yet probably a little works a little better with existing water
Yeah,
than we do.
maybe as we evolve, we'll get oily fur and big flat tails, and
I think that would be a great thing. Yeah.
yeah, we have
And
to.
big yellow teeth.
Where I grew up in New England, in Connecticut, Massachusetts, there were a lot of beaver around there in the mountains and in the streams, and I always was fascinated by just the way they have these underwater entrances to their lodges and these weird looking creatures and the chewing down of the trees that they do. And anyway, we have to go to a break. We'll be right back. Matthew Chase Daniel, and we're talking with Stacy Levy and Patricia Lee Watts on Coffee and Culture. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture. My name's Matthew Chase Daniel. I'm talking with Patricia Lee Watts and Stacy Levy about Stacy's work, eoartspace work, and Missing Waters, which is coming to the Santa Fe Railyard. Friday, April 25th is an open, probably from around 10 in the morning to 4 in the afternoon. And anyone can come and contribute and be a part of the making of this piece. And it's going to be painting on the asphalt and concrete along, basically along the rail trail from near the Caboose and La Choza at the corner of Cerrillos and St. Francis, upstream, you could say, towards downtown. So you're going up along through the Railyard Park, past Railyard Flats, and up to Site Santa Fe, and then it will cross this. So this is sort of a continuous painting that'll evolve, and it'll cross Paseo and go along the railroad track edge of the Railyard Performance Space and El Museo Cultural, and then up to the Jean Cocteau Cinema and to the New Mexico School for the Arts.
And it'll be done with that. Those that Monday and Tuesday are being painted with students from the School of Art. So that's going to be an exciting day with 40 students each day painting a big section of the missing waters.
Yeah, I've worked with students from that school on different art things, and the students there are great, and the teachers there are great. It's a wonderful institution.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that a lot. The teachers have been incredibly supportive, and Corinne has been wonderful. And it's a great thing to do with students because students are so used to working on the biggest piece of paper you probably do is like a 24 by 36 inch piece of paper. And this is a huge drawing. And you have, instead of sort of drawing from your wrist, you get to sort of paint from your whole shoulder. And it's very freeing and a lot of fun to paint on the surface of the ground. And it depends how hot it is. It dries very quickly. And it's nice to paint in a full body way with a lot of other people on the same big piece of paper.
Right.
So it's a very physical kind of installation, which is a lot of fun.
And it seems like the imagery that's being painted, I mean, you could say it's flow or waves or just water and bubbles and stuff, but I imagine it's up to each person who's painting their piece how they want it to look.
Exactly. We'll do a primer on water flow because there are lots of different water flows, turbulence, which has those beautiful vortices forms, and then laminar flows, which are more parallel lines. And then people can invent whatever else they want to add into the pattern. It's a little like doing a giant quilt where everyone brings a square and you sort of join them together. And that's a nice aspect too. So there'll be some joinery in the process also, but people can really run with the flow pattern.
Yeah. And is it just blue chalk or is there
it's just blue chalk. Got to have some consistency here.
Yeah. No, good. Yeah, water's pretty blue as it reflects the sky.
It's only blue reflecting the sky for the most part, unless it's got a lot of limestone in it, or that's a reflection. But it is how we think about water. Blue is the color of water, and for humans will eternally be. Maybe not for the Greeks, but for because of the wine dark sea that Homer was talking about, which was, I always loved that the wine dark sea could either be red wine when the water was churning, or it could be a white wine when the water was calmer. But our water, I think, particularly in America, we see it as blue. It's sort of the internet or national symbol for water. And so I'm sticking with blue because it's a
Yeah,
good way to describe it.
right. And the sky isn't blue either. It's just all the other light got
Right.
filtered out.
Nothing is blue in this world. Birds that are blue are not really blue. It's how they're reflecting light.
Yeah,
So it's an interesting thing. The blue
yeah.
jays are really gray jays.
Oh yeah, I saw one this morning. Um, so the part that's open, so anyone can come by, and you can come by for half an hour, or longer
Okay, as
if you
long as you
want.
want. Yeah.
Um, and so find a group of people with paintbrushes and buckets Friday, April 25th, between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m. Um, somewhere along that section where I described it. I think this part, the Friday, will probably be between site and La Chosa side. And then the NMSA students the following Monday, the 28th and 29th, will be doing the section closer to the school.
Correct. Yeah.
But we'll see how that goes. And then at 5 p.m. to around 6:30 that same Friday, the 25th of April, we'll have a little celebration outside the community room, which is the small building behind the parking lot behind Site Santa Fe, at the top of the park there. Um, and we'll have some non-alcoholic drinks and some food and live music by the local bluegrass band named Shaggy Peak. And Stacy will be there, and Patricia will be there, and I'll be there. And I wanted to say this whole project is um, a project of the Railyard Art Project, which is run by the Railyard Park Conservancy. So occasionally, usually once a year, the Railyard Art Project puts out a public call for proposals, and I'm part of that committee, and we fund usually two things per year. So we get submissions and we go through those, and we're a small committee of volunteers who look through that. And so Stacy's piece was one of the two chosen
Yeah. And we
for
really
this.
jumped on this project, Patricia and I, because the idea of water in this particularly mostly dry town is really interesting. And it's been on the top of many, many artists thinking, where is the water? Where has it gone? When it comes, where does it flow? There's so much interesting history of where water flowed at one point and the traces that it leaves behind um, in uh, in all sorts of ways of understanding the city. It becomes a really interesting idea. And for me, coming from the east, where our water is a much more direct thing, it falls out of the sky, and then the rivers are more filled up. To have a river that happens and then doesn't happen is a really interesting thing for me. So studying this other kind of water regime that happens in the west is super intriguing for me as an artist from the east, and I think that's a nice thing about bringing an outside water person in to kind of learn about the water system that's happening somewhere else.
Yeah,
That's wonderful for me, and it's great to share water thoughts with people who've been really looking at these systems too. So
yeah.
I'm excited about that.
The even the layout of Santa Fe is based on flow of water. Like if our main sort of commercial artery that heads out of town is Cerrillos Road, and as that heads, and that's the rail yard park is along the edge of that, and there's a still existing old acequia
That's right.
that runs water there. But my understanding is that Cerrillos Road basically parallels the contour of the hillside that runs from Cerrillos Road down to the Santa Fe River, and that there was acequia running through there to
Yeah,
water
I believe there
fields
was.
using
Yeah, yeah.
gravity, and those acequias are always contoured, so they're heading slightly downhill, never too fast and never too
Got to
little.
head downhill. As I remember, an engineer told me what I was working with on a project with acid mine drainage. Said, you just have to remember the water really needs to run downhill. And it was like, okay, I won't try and make it do anything else.
Yeah,
But it is interesting how many acequias there were. Santa Fe was really woven with these waterways, and they have disappeared from people's experience. Now when we think about the landscape, what do we think about? We think about the name of the road. That's how you explain where you are in a place, is by
Yeah.
a road name. Well, roads just weren't part of culture before. It was all about, you'd explain where you were by a waterway and the name of that, or a confluence. And how different our lives are because of how we measure where we are is by this hard, kind of nasty surface of a road. And it used to be by something that was much more life-giving, um, and aquatic. So that change is kind of, is a sadness to me. I think it's a huge loss for humans to see where they are by asphalt and
Yeah.
not
And
by water.
that's all changed quickly in Santa Fe. I mean, in the last 100 years. Um,
That's right. That's super fast change. Yeah, that and going sort of drier is part of that change too. Surfaces changed, and where how water was conveyed changed. It's more underground now than it was before. So
yeah. Well, we have to go to a break, but I love sort of in our current world visualizing, say, what I was saying before in Santa Fe, we have these dams and reservoirs, and then the river, instead of flowing down the riverbed, all of it gets dispersed into thousands of little pipes that run also downhill through the city, some of them
mhm.
pressurized going uphill, but then through the sewage pipes, all are all gravity fed downhill and then rejoin at the Santa Fe River down in La
It's
Cienega.
we still have our watersheds, but they're made differently, and they're usually perpendicular and made with pipes.
Yeah,
So they're still going downhill for that gravity feed. And they contain different things: clean water, not so clean water, really not so clean water.
right.
And they culminate in a different way. But it is a watershed. The urban structure is still based on a watershed, and it's underground. Unfortunately, don't get to really, that doesn't signal to us when we're walking down the street what part of the watershed is under our feet. Is sewage flowing
Yeah.
underneath or not?
Yeah, we got to stop. We'll be right back. We're back with Coffee and Culture. My name is Matthew Chase Janet. I'm talking to Stacy Levy and Patricia Lee Watts. There was a word I saw, and so I watched maybe some YouTube video, Stacy, that you were doing, and there was a little graphic about the flows inside a river where things swirl. And there's a word called thalweg. Is that how you
Mm-hmm.
pronounce it?
Yeah,
I had never
I
seen that
remember
word,
quickly. Okay.
Thalweg, which is maybe like a section where after something meanders and it flows straight for a little bit. Is that?
I believe that is that a lot of those words for just that are used for hydrology are actually Scandinavian words, which are very interesting, or Northern Germanic words,
Oh,
wet
interesting.
areas, and they were watching this water flow all the time, and that's the words came out of that. And there's wonderful vocabulary with all of the watery things, and just wonderful patterns too. I mean, when you think about the patterns of the vortices, how the water is moving, we can't see it. The vortices are invisible, but it's this beautiful kind of heart-shaped spiral, and that pattern turns up everywhere. That is actually helping us inside our heart close the valves of the upper chamber. Leonardo da Vinci discovered this by creating a glass heart. He was near enough Venice so he could have it blown, and he sent water with grass seeds in the heart and figured out how those two chambers worked. And it's with the vortices kind of nudging the valve closed. So without that pattern, we wouldn't be alive. And it's an interesting thing. It's an essential pattern, and yet a pattern that very few people know about. You see it when a hurricane is coming because it's a liquid pattern, which also includes gases, which includes the atmosphere. And when a hurricane is coming, you'll see that carbon street vortex coming through. And it's an extraordinary pattern, but it happens on the macro scale of weather. It happens the dust in Jupiter is in those patterns too, but also it's happening inside our hearts. And anytime it's happening when you stir cream into your coffee and you get those beautiful swirls, that's a vortex, and that's no different than what happens when a hurricane comes over the land.
Yeah. Is it true that whirlpools, like in your bathtub drain, go clockwise north of the equator and counterclockwise south of the equator?
I have not been able to get a definitive answer on that, but
Me
I think
either.
about it.
Yeah. I got to do some more traveling. Patricia, you don't know?
That's true. Yeah, we have a lot of Australian artists with eoartspace, so I'll double check it, but I think
Yeah,
they
could you check on that
Yeah.
and get back to
Right.
us,
Next
please?
time we have next time there's a meeting with an Australians are there, let's run a tub and have both the northern and
oh,
the
we want to
southern
see it. We
hemisphere
want to see the
draining and see what happens.
Yeah.
We'll film that.
So another exciting part of this project is on Sunday, April 27th in the auditorium at Site Santa Fe, starting at 1 p.m. Patricia here, Patricia Lee Watts, will moderate a panel, and Stacy will speak for a while about sort of the stuff we're talking about here and more. And then there'll be a sort of roundtable panel with Basha Erlin, Dominique Mazot, Bobby Basold, and Paula Castillo, all of whom are practicing water artists. Bobby and Basold and Dominique Mazot and Valerie Martinez, I think, did a project around the Santa Fe River where this was 20 years ago, maybe, I don't know, with people were encouraged to wear blue clothing and bring blue tarps and blue fabric and congregate and walk through the river. And then it was shot with drone photography or a helicopter. Did we have drones back then?
Such a great piece. That
That
really
was a
is a wonderful piece.
350.org project. Yeah, they photographed it from the, I think that was early, documenting from what's a camera from drones. Yeah. So the idea was that it would be able to be seen from space, from a satellite.
Yeah. And they also, the three of them hiked from the top of the watershed all the way to the Rio Grande, Cochiti Lake area where the Santa Fe River joins the Rio Grande. So that was just
coming here for me is like coming to, meet the goddesses of waterwork.
Bringing Stacy into the fold. We had Helen and Newton Harrison here. What was that, like 30 years ago? I can't remember, 25 years ago. So they've done a watershed project here.
They gave a talk here. They were great. They were crabby with each other. They were like
they always were.
That's a shtick.
I love that.
Yeah. It was very sweet. I was like, oh,
so real.
You can do an artist talk like this. What a awakening.
A rare married couple artist duo.
Yeah. And then Basha Erland has done a lot of stuff with water, and she published a book with you, Patricia, right? That you edited and published.
I wrote a book with her 2 years ago that was published, Repositories, Sculptures for Waterway Journeys. That's been picked up by Printed Matter in New York, so we're excited about that. Yeah, they've picked up a couple other books now too of eoartspace.
Good. That's really good.
Yeah,
Basha and I go back. We traveled to China actually to give a nature-based solutions panel, which was really fun. And we went to look for where the source of the Beijing drinking water was on a wild ride to try and find the reservoir. So that was a lot of fun.
That's great. It's great going to places you're unfamiliar with a mission like that. That takes you on things that otherwise you would never know or see.
It really is. That's what I really love about working with any kind of natural system in a city in particular, because you see the city so differently when you see a natural system connecting to it or disconnecting from it, and you see where those junctions are. I think it's a wonderful way to get to know a city as a different layer. It's not just about where the good coffee is or where the great bread is, but it's this underlying system. So you could be in the middle of a pretty unscenic part and be fascinated because you know that there's a confluence underfoot, or something that used to flow doesn't flow anymore. It activates the city in a completely different way, and I love that.
There's a great museum in Paris called the Musée des Égouts, the Museum of the Sewer, where you can go down underground in these beautiful stone little waterways that are, very old, and learn about how the sewers work.
Yeah, and the sewer, that's our watershed.
In 2022, eoartspace did a show in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, and we invited Stacy to do a site work along the East River. Maybe we should share a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's the tide flowers.
Yeah, it's really that's another case where a natural system is happening, and it's being walked past or ignored by most of the people who live in the city. And one of that systems that I love to concentrate on are urban tidal rivers. And the East River, though the East River is technically not a river, it's a tidal strait. It acts like a river and it looks like a river, so we're going to call it that. And it rises and falls twice a day, with a 4-foot rise and drop twice a day, which is pretty substantial. I mean, I can't imagine too much else that could do that you wouldn't notice. But it's happening in such a contained kind of area, and we don't get down to the water's edge. So I thought that we should know that. You should know what tide it is at any given moment in your everyday commute. So these they were large pink petals that rose and fell with the surface of the river with the tide, and would show that full range of the 4 feet of tidal difference between high tide and low tide. And so you could look down, and if the flowers were completely extended or basically bloomed, then you knew it was high tide. And if the flowers seemed that they had closed up like buds, then it was low tide. And somewhere in between, if you watched it long enough, you could see if the tide was rising or lowering. So I just feel like getting in touch with what's happening in your city, what's happening in nature in your city. It's like the headlines of nature that you have just been ignoring. To finally read those is really thrilling. And that's what I intend to do with my work, is to make a way of reading the story of what's happening on the site that you've been missing because no one's shown it to you yet, and our structures don't show it to you very well, unless you have tide marks or something, which doesn't happen in most places unless there are a lot of fishermen. But this idea of getting to know your city and the nature that runs through it is really thrilling to me.
Yeah, that was beautiful. And you're using simple technologies to create this. That piece you did on the Susquehanna River too, that these round floats in different colors that at sometimes look like arched caterpillars and other times are shooting straight up. And it's just the simple buoyancy of the things and the height at which they're anchored on the floor of the river that makes it work.
When you're dealing with a river, that was a Schuylkill actually, but only Philadelphians know how to say that strange Dutch word. On the Schuylkill River, which has a 6-foot tide, I wanted to show that. Another tidal river that nobody understands changes. Even I didn't know about it until I was about 22 or so. I realized there's a 6-foot tide in this river that I've been living right next to. It's like, what? How is that possible? But it goes on like that. Yeah. But keeping it simple is very important, because the rivers really throw a lot of power and a lot of they really vex any kind of technology. So you have to keep it as simple and robust as possible.
Yeah. Well, it's really beautiful. We have to go to our last break. We'll be right back. You're back listening to Coffee and Culture. You can find podcasts of past shows either on my website, which is chasedaniel.com, or on Spotify or Amazon or Apple or any of those podcast things. And just look for Coffee and Culture with Matthew Chase Daniel, and you should be able to find it. I'm talking to Stacy Levy and Patricia Lee Watts. Patricia, I want to talk a little bit about how you and Stacy applied for this project at the Railyard Railyard Art Project, and about what eoartspace does. It's an organization that focuses on arts and ecology, and it's been around for 26 years, since 99. And now you have a membership model. So you have members who are artists doing work in the eco-art sphere, and then you really advocate a lot for them and find opportunities and curate shows of your members and curate shows that go beyond the membership, and co-write books and get them published and travel and learn what's going on. And tell us about your whole thing.
Yeah, so I've been doing this for a little while. I did work with Amy Lipton from 99 to 2020 when she passed away too early. And we were kind of out there early, educating institutions about what these artists were doing. It was a smaller group of artists back then. There were maybe 20, 30 who we knew about well. as the years went on. By 2019, when I moved to Santa Fe full time, um, Amy and I had been working together 20 years, and I was almost ready to put it on the shelf, and it just hit me, what if we made it a membership model? This was before the pandemic. Within 3-4 months, we had over 500 members because Amy and I have worked with a lot of artists through the years. And yeah, we've had over 2,000 members and that's artists and scientists, not just, and also advocates and students, and we've got different member levels, but yeah, over 2,000 since 2020 from 29 countries. And every time someone joins, I'm always like, wow, another incredible artist doing great work. And I think through the pandemic, my motto became all hands on deck. I really feel I've curated a lot of shows at this point. I'm here to help, connect the artists with the scientists, whatever they need, and create a community where we can share resources and move each other along as a movement, and find more strength in that than just kind of operating on our own in all parts of the world.
I think that's such an important part of this kind of work, this eco art work, is that it is not someone going up in their studio and making something and bringing it down and trading it for a sandwich or taking it to a gallery. It's a super collaborative activity. And Patricia and I are collaborating to try and get something out on a site. And it requires a lot of different sectors. And Karina Heian of the New Mexico School for the Arts is adding a whole other collaborative component to connect us with students and allowing it to be for very young artists too, and a big activity that just wouldn't happen if it was just, I wouldn't be able to make this happen as a single person. So this kind of work is about something larger. It's about natural function, and it's about our relationship with nature, and it needs to be done by a lot of different people, a wider array of people too, because it just isn't a single person's activity. A solo person. Yeah.
Having worked with Stacy before, and I think maybe we had talked about that you had family here, and I saw the call and I was like, maybe Stacy would be interested in this. So yeah, I put it out to her. She said yes. We put together the proposal, and I had also given a talk at the New Mexico School of the Arts through Karina a couple of years ago. So I figured that would be great to involve them. So we Karina and Stacy and I were in a conversation before we made the proposal, and we were so happy and grateful that we got it.
Yeah, we were happy too. It was one of the two best proposals. I forget how many we got, maybe 30 or so. I don't actually remember, but it was really strong. We got a lot of great proposals. And if people are out there, are artists who want to show their work in the park, you can go to railyardpark.org and go to programs and then public art and learn about the program, and probably sign up for a mailing list, and just keep your eye out for these opportunities that come once a year, usually in the summer. July, August September is when we put out those calls. And also, so those are funded, and we get money from New Mexico Arts and from the City of Santa Fe Arts and Culture Department to fund those. But also, if people have self-funded projects, they can also apply to the Railyard Art Project for that. And all that information is on that website at railyardpark.org. And
it's so cool to work out. If you're working with nature, it's very cool to be out in it and dealing with the various things it throws at you, that it might rain, it may not. Yeah. It's going to blow. It's going to have wildlife moving across it. Lots of people are going to influence it too. So the idea that when you take a site that's out in a public area, it has a very different treatment than if it's in a gallery. And I think that's a kind of thrilling challenge to do as an artist.
Yeah. The whole, when the Railyard Park was developed, maybe 20 years ago, it was part of the founding sort of charter of the art that it had, of the park, that it had a ongoing art project, and that it was related to culture and ecology. And part of large sections of the park are dedicated to native grasslands and native species. And it's a ecologically minded park that's in the heart of the city, which is a great resource for all of us.
Cool.
Both Matthew and I have, curated these outdoor site works early on. We've talked about that before. It was 1998 in Santa Monica Mountains that I did my first one, which was with international artist Niels Udo, and ends up a woman who became a member recently emailed me. She found out that I had commissioned that work, and she's currently making a musical composition based on this base. It's called Red Rock Nest. It's made with a rhododendron, and it's in a cave. Well, this was from '98. And so she will be performing that. She's coming to Santa Fe on May 17th at the Quail Run. Her name is Jody Ferber, or Feber, Feber.
Yeah.
So that's coming full circle for me. That's,
Yeah.
25 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, in the art world, 25 years isn't really that long. That's
Yeah. And
Oh
then
yeah, I have a lot more work to do. I know that.
you curated a show of ephemeral nature works made from nature in nature up at the Santa Fe Audubon Center a year or two ago.
Yes, last year.
Yeah.
You're adding time on there. That was in August that it opened, where there is no name for art. So those pieces are still there, decaying slowly, being documented over time, and we'll be publishing a kind of a booklet on that.
Nice.
Yeah, the city, the Arts and Culture Department funded that.
Through their sponsorship program?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a great thing that they do. Yeah, and we through Axel Contemporary, which my friend Jerry Wellman and I run, we put together, I think it was every other year, 3 different times at the Leonora Curtin Wetland Preserve in La Cienega, something called Wilderness Acts, where same sort of thing, artists would make work with natural materials that were ephemeral and decay back into the landscape. And that was always a wonderful thing. We would do it in the autumn when the cottonwood leaves were turning golden, and it's a beautiful little spot out there, which I don't think is really open to the public anymore. So that's part of why we stopped it. And we just got busy. We always get busy with other things, and things come and go. But the website, if you want to know more about eoartspace, is at eoartspace.org.
Correct.
Right. So one word, eoartspace, and check it out. There's a lot of information on there. And Stacy also has a website with great photos and video and writing, and it's extensive. I didn't make it all the way through, but I spent
That's okay.
a long time on it. There's great stuff on there. And what's that website, Stacy?
That's stacylevy.com.
Okay.
Levy, it's the Levy part.
So we got to go, but thank you both. And people come. Oh, for the Sunday, April 27th talk at Site Santa Fe, you can RSVP to that to reserve a place, and do that by emailing Izzy, IZZY, at railyardpark.org, and she'll save you a place. So we'll see you Friday, April 25th during the day to paint, and during the 5 p.m. to celebrate, and Sunday at site, and then the NMSA students on the following Monday and Tuesday. And then just come by the park and check it out, and ride your bike on top of the art, or walk on top of the art, or skateboard on top of the art, whatever you want. You can even ride a horse.
You can. This was fun. Thanks so much.
Thank you both.